I cannot wait to talk to you about my postpartum. Oh, I even have I think I have a chapter in the book on it. I think it's already written because I'm almost done the book, but I took a little bit of time off because summer gets a little bit busy or a little bit slow in certain areas. So it's coming. I promise you it's coming. It is coming and it's almost done. So yay to me. And yay for you. But I want to talk to you about this postpartum because on top of having anxiety, BPD, which has been in remission for years, depression, all of those things, right? Which is already an issue. You throw in after I had the baby. So I've had 3 kids. Like, you think I would have learned my lesson after the first one, quite honestly. I had postpartum with all 3 of my children. And it does seem like, I'm trying to think if it got progressively worse. It's kind of like anxiety. You know how, like, if you have an anxiety attack, you swear it's the worst anxiety attack you've ever had in your entire life. I think it's the same thing with postpartum for me. And for me, my postpartum, so the first time when I had Jasmine, she's actually expecting a baby next week. And so we communicate, we do talk. She lives in a different state. We don't really see each other or anything. We don't talk a lot, but, I was straight up with her, let her know what was going on. And it was important because she's going to have a baby. So since she comes from the lineage, my lineage, of mental stuff and hormonal dysregulation, it's important that she understands that she's going to have to stay on top of it. So it was very important to share that with her. But I was made to feel, and this is so important for people who are still in childbearing age, if in fact you choose to have a child, I was made to feel like the worst human on the planet, right? Because I wasn't, and I was going through my healing, but nowhere near equipped to handle the berating of people of like, what is wrong with you? Like, that's your child. You're supposed to have a bond with this child. And I'm like, okay. But I don't. Like, and how could you do that? And my sister, who's since passed, she couldn't have kids. Something happened. I don't know. She had a really crazy life. And so she couldn't have kids. And then she was like, well, I'll take her. And I'm like, no. I knew she wasn't going to be equipped to handle it. And if I kept her, I definitely wasn't equipped to handle it. Now, when I gave her up, I know who I gave her up to. It was not a family member. And I thought it would be a better situation than it was. So she didn't really have a great situation there either. But she definitely went ahead. Now, if I was maybe 2 years further, like I was when I had my son, maybe. And if I had a better support system and understood more medication-wise, and then maybe. But let me tell you, my postpartum was really bad. Okay, it was, when I say bad, I didn't feel really violent until, I'm trying to think if I felt violent with my son. I think I felt violent with Sienna, and I felt violent, I think, with Jasmine. And when I say violent, like I felt like out of control, but I didn't feel connected, right? Like, it was almost like a repulsion. And yeah, it doesn't matter what you say to me. You will never hurt my feelings because I already been down that road. When you get torn apart and told you got to do this, you should have this attachment, or not attachment, you should have this. Nobody kind of tells you that it's, they just go, well, this is what you're supposed to do. That's the problem, is people just say this is what you're supposed to do. And then there's a lot of judgment. And it wreaked havoc on my mental health. Havoc. And so I would have done anything seriously. I'd have been like, oh, child, do you want this child? Like, it doesn't have to make sense to you. It doesn't have to sound, it can sound horrible to you. It doesn't matter to me. Because when you're going through a postpartum situation, it can be violent. People do very violent, like go to jail violent towards children things, because they don't feel like they have that support. And it's a hard feeling to explain it to you unless you've been through it. It's a feeling of isolation. It's a feeling of disgust. It's like a body disgust. It's a feeling of no connection with that child at all. There is not a bond. You don't want to deal with the child. You don't want to look at the child. You're doing it out of obligation. Like, there's a lot that comes with it. There's a lot of remorse that you carry. Not remorse. That's not the right word. It's not remorse. It's just like flat. And not a lot of people were talking about it. And people are afraid to tell you. You know how people go, oh my gosh, I just see your motherly instincts. that doesn't mean that if you don't have them, there's something wrong with you. That's why there's a lot of my clients in their 20s and 30s. And for many reasons, they're just not having kids. And they're like, and I just don't know that I want to like give up my autonomy. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. But you have to understand, for some people, you do want kids. And when you want kids, you don't necessarily bank on that. Now, you're more predisposed to it, obviously, if you have depression and anxiety. There's still a level for any normal person, normal regulated person. You're still going through all of these hormones that leave your system, right? And, you know, that's where, you know, now I learned more, right? So immediately after I had my daughter, I was on my medication, and now they have like your sertraline and different things like that, which is your Zoloft. Those are much safer now, like during the pregnancies, much, much safer. But I didn't have that with her. And so here I am, no medicine, which I had just started working on myself, just started finding a cocktail that was working for me, and got pregnant, right? And yeah, it was just not a good situation. Then afterwards, you know, I was like, okay, it's immediate anxiety attacks. Same thing with Sienna. Right after I had her, I was in a panic attack for like 2 days. Like, think of it, the worst panic attack for like 2 days until I got back on my, well, actually it wasn't. It was 2 days. And then they finally gave me my Klonopin, and I was like, oh, thank God. And it just helped cycle me back in. And so you have to understand that when you're going through it. So I want to speak on it because there's nothing wrong with you. Because you're not bonding with somebody doesn't make you a villain. It doesn't make you a villain. Okay? I also want you to know that you can get through that. Because I certainly did. I learned that with my second and my third, right? Is like, you can't, it was still hell. I'm not going to lie to you. It was still hell. And luckily, like I would tell my husband, who was working pretty close, my husband now with Sienna, like, hey, I'm not feeling all that great with her right now. And I'm going to go, I'm going to put her in the playpen. I need to sit outside because I need to regulate my system. And he'd be like, yeah, it's fine. I'll just come home for lunch. And so, you know, he would come, not every day, but he would come home for lunch. And he'd be like, go shower, you know, go do whatever you need to do. And because I was also honest with him, right? I didn't bond with I didn't bond with my son or my daughter until they were like 9, 10 months old. I just did the things. And don't let somebody make you feel bad about it. Don't let anybody ever make you feel bad about it. But you do have to address it. This falls into you. Yeah, everything's going to come back to you. Everything comes back to your responsibility. And so I knew, get on my medication, do the things I need to do my breathing exercises. I was just starting my mindfulness and my practice of mindfulness and just started kind of starting to do this as a profession. And, you know, like there was a lot going on and I needed my own space, but you need to be honest about how you feel. The way that I was ridiculed when I had Jasmine was insane. I was called everything from a monster to a bad person. Some of it was directly said and some of it was inferenced, right? And I thought something was wrong with me, you know, and then I had to hear my sister, why didn't you give her to me? Why didn't you? I was like, Joanne, I was like, damn, I'm not doing that. No, I also don't want to have to be around her right now. Like, you're missing the entire point. And she lived in a whole different state. But I mean, you could say, well, do you regret it? Well, I don't regret it because what does the regret do? Me and her have talked about it. Yeah, she's still dealing with some things, not because of me so much. Well, I guess essentially because of me, but really because of the upbringing that she had with where she went. So me and her have talked. We're good. I don't have regrets because I learned more about me. And so you have to remember, don't feel embarrassed by your postpartum. Don't feel like a villain because you're not immediately connected to that child or children. But you got to open up and you got to speak about it. Get help for it. You have the therapies, but the therapy is great because it's going to help you understand it. But you also have to have a good dose of medication there. Okay. You're not going to be able to do that sometimes on your own. Do not do that to yourself. I did that with Jasmine and it did not work well. And it doesn't work well for my clients. So if you're thinking about having a child and you have depression, don't let that scare you. Seriously, don't let that scare you. You will get on the other side of it. I promise you, you will get on the other side of it. And it is very rewarding. I mean, kids are stressful in general, but it's very, very rewarding. But be honest let people know. And if they come at you and they say, well, don't you think you should stop them in their tracks? I did not have the self-confidence in 23 years old to stop them in the tracks and say, listen, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to listen to your feedback. So take the lack of self-esteem, the lack of knowledge that I had at 23, and do not repeat that mistake. Don't, because it's just going to hurt you. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just how our bodies work sometimes. So be gentle to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the people around you. If they don't like it, they don't have to like it. Then maybe those people who are naysayers, maybe you need to cut them out. Because you're already dealing with something mentally with your postpartum. You don't need the chatter in your ear, okay? So if you have any questions about that, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to go further with it, talk a little bit about it in the book. So yeah, transparency, baby. Game called life. That's what we do here.